judges of the evidence to be laid before you. Now be just and fear not, for the true administration of justice is the foundation of good government.
Famous jury trials. Dramatizations of cases taken from actual court history. The names of persons and places have been altered to protect the identity of those concerned.
The People versus Warren Whitaker.
Near the waterfront of a large eastern city a few summers ago, a huge warehouse was under construction. And there at noon one Saturday, a payroll guard named Warren Whitaker stumbled into the superintendent's office to announce that he'd been held up on the way from the bank, that the payroll had been stolen, and the paymasters shot. The city buzzed with the story of the daring daylight payroll robbery. And then came a surprising bulletin from the police department announcing that they'd arrested none other than Warren Whitaker, the privately hired payroll guard who had reported the crime. Arrested him and charged him with the murder of paymaster Jacob Harriman.
We commence tonight's famous jury trial.
The trial of Warren Whitaker.
And now we take you to the courtroom, where a capacity crowd listened excitedly as the district attorney outlined the fantastic details of the charge against Warren Whitaker and heard him promise the jury.
And I will prove that it was this monster, Warren Whitaker, who shot and killed Jacob Harriman for the $5,000 payroll he was carrying that fateful Saturday morning last July. I call my first witness, Walter Tracy.
Walter Tracy. Walter Tracy.
Take the stand, please. Walter Tracy, do you solemnly swear the evidence you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Mr. Tracy, you were superintendent on the warehouse job for which the payroll was intended. The Saturday morning Harriman was killed.
Yes, I was.
It was to you that the defendant reported the holdup.
Yes. About 5 minutes to 12, Whitaker rushed into my office shack and yelled to me to call the cops. Said he'd been held up and Harriman killed.
And what did Whitaker say had happened?
He said he and Harriman were driving on the back road. That's a temporary delivery road between the warehouse site and the river. Harriman was at the wheel and Whitaker was beside him when suddenly there was a shot. And Harriman pitched forward. The car swerved and Whitaker grabbed the wheel. Then he said 2 men jumped on the running board and made him get out of the car. Then they drove off with the payroll and Harriman's dead body.
I see. Now, was it usual for Harriman and Whitaker to bring the payroll by this back road?
No. They usually came in by the main entrance on Front Street. No one uses the back road anymore.
I see. Now, Mr. Tracy, was Whitaker overdue when he rushed into your office and reported the holdup?
Yes, he was about 20 minutes late.
Would it have taken him anything like 20 minutes to walk or run from the holdup scene to your office?
No, not more than 5 minutes at the most.
Thank you. Cross-examine.
Mr. Tracy, hadn't there been other holdups along the waterfront within the last month?
Yes, there had been 1 or 2.
Did Whitaker explain why he and Harriman took the back road that morning?
Why, yes, he did. Yes, he said Harriman told him there was a suspicious man hanging around the Front Street entrance to the warehouse site. And so they took a roundabout route from the bank with the payroll, just to be on the safe side.
Well, doesn't that explain why Whitaker was 20 minutes overdue when he came into your office to tell you of the holdup? That's all.
Call Police Detective Frank Domenico.
Frank Domenico!
Police officer Frank Domenico told how he had found the abandoned car with Harriman's body in it in a vacant lot 12 blocks from the warehouse site. And then he told of searching Whitaker's room and finding $500 hidden there.
Thank you, officer. Cross-examine.
Officer, did you find the gun with which Harriman was shot? Well, no, we weren't able to locate that. Have you found the missing payroll? No, nothing but that $500 we found in Whitaker's room. But you don't know that money was part of the payroll, do you? Well, no. And you arrested this man here without having found a murder weapon, without being able to connect the weapon to him in any way. His own gun is missing, stolen by the hold-up man. You cannot connect either the weapon or the missing money to this man here, and yet you have charged him with murder. No more questions.
Call Dr. Alf Conroy.
Dr. Conroy. Dr. Conroy. Dr. Conroy.
Oh, Doctor, did you examine the body of Jacob Harriman?
Yes. He'd been shot through the right temple, the bullet lodging in his brain. Death must have been instantaneous.
He was shot through the right temple?
Yes.
Someone had jumped on the running board on Harriman's side of the car. Could he have inflicted this wound?
Only with great difficulty. He'd have had to put his arm around Harriman's head, so to speak, and fire back towards himself.
Thank you, Doctor. You're a witness.
Doctor, if a man had stood on the right-hand running board on the side away from the driver, there would have been no difficulty in placing a bullet in Harriman's right temple? No, that is true. Thank you. No more questions.
Call James Spinelli.
James Spinelli. James Spinelli.
Take the stand.
Your Honor, I believe this witness is too young to understand the meaning of an oath.
We'll see. How old are you, James?
Oh, pretend my next birthday.
You know what it means to take an oath in a court of law?
You mean if they catch me in a lie, I get tossed in the can?
Harder. The spectators will refrain from any outbursts. You may swear in the witness, Mr. Clerk.
James Spinelli, do you solemnly swear that the evidence you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Well, Jimmy, where were you on the morning Paymaster Harriman was shot?
I was swimming off a dock on the old back road near the warehouse.
What time did you leave there, Jimmy?
About 11:45.
Did you see anything unusual as you left?
Yeah. I seen a car coming up the back road, leaving across the road, and it stopped, and a fella gets out from the right side and walks around the car and gets in the driver's seat.
I asked the defendant to rise and stand where the witness can see him. Now, Jimmy, is that the man you saw?
I can't say for sure, but he's built like him, big and tall and husky.
Now, Jimmy, did you see anyone else in the car?
No, it was funny. There should have been someone in the driver's seat, but there wasn't till this guy went around and got in on that side.
But if there had been a man lying dead on the floor of the car, you couldn't have seen him, could you?
Objection!
Overruled. You may answer, Jimmy.
No, I couldn't.
Thank you. Take the witness.
Jimmy, you say you saw this happen at 11:45 that Saturday morning.
Yes, sir.
But when you first told this story to the police, didn't you say it happened before 11:30?
Objection! Counsel's trying to confuse the witness.
Your Honor, the times are all important to this case. If the witness saw this occurrence before 11:30, the man he saw could not have been the defendant because the defendant had just left the bank a few minutes before.
Objection overruled. The witness will answer.
Well, Jimmy, didn't you tell the police you saw this man before 11:30?
Yeah, I guess I did, but I was wrong. We doped it out after, and we figured that I must have left the dope later than I thought, about 11:45.
We doped this out. You and who else?
Me and Mr. Hogan.
Oh, and who is Mr. Hogan?
He has a pool room and a bowling alley. Been after a pinboard job for him for a long time, and he sent for me and offered me a job.
I see. Jimmy, you had already told your story to the police before Mr. Hogan offered you this job as a pin boy.
Yeah.
Remember, Jimmy, you've got to tell the truth. Now, didn't Hogan tell you what to say?
Objection!
Sustained.
Jimmy, how far away from you was the man you saw that day?
Oh, I guess about a block away.
Uh-huh. Well, now, Jimmy, look back there in the courtroom. Do you see the lady in the end seat of the last row?
Where? Oh, yeah, I see the one you mean.
What color is her hat?
Why? Tan yellow, ain't it?
Jim, that woman is bareheaded. She's not wearing a hat.
Oh, yeah. I see now. She's a blonde. I thought it was a yellow hat at first.
You're nearsighted, aren't you, Jimmy?
Some.
You wear glasses, don't you?
Only in school.
But you weren't wearing glasses that day when you'd been swimming, were you? Why, you couldn't recognize your own father a block away without your glasses, could you? Your Honor, I ask that all the testimony of this witness be stricken from the record. He is obviously a coached and perjured witness.
I did see that man. I did. I saw everything I said.
I object to these unfounded accusations, Your Honor.
I did see it. I did.
Order.
And now we take you back to the courtroom where the murder trial of Warren Whitaker continued and another prosecution witness, Michael Burke, a bus driver, had been sworn in.
Mr. Burke, your bus route takes you past the warehouse site where the holdup occurred.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Look at the defendant, Mr. Burke. Ever seen him before?
Yes, sir. It was about 10 minutes to 12 on the day Harriman was murdered. This man got in my bus near the lot where Harriman's body was found, and he drove about 12 blocks to the warehouse site.
How do you place the incident so exactly?
Well, he offered me a $20 bill, and then he seemed kind of startled and shoved it back in his pocket real quick and pulled out a dollar bill instead. It stuck in my mind because he acted so nervous.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Your witness.
Mr. Burke, had you ever seen the defendant, Warren Whitaker, before the payroll robbery?
I don't know. Not to remember anyways.
When did you first remember that Whitaker rode on your bus that day?
Well, that night when I read about the murder.
But until then, you hadn't given this man with a $20 bill a thought, had you?
Well, no, I got to think
That's all, Mr. Burke.
Call Benjamin Hogan.
Benjamin Hogan. Benjamin Hogan. Benjamin Hogan.
Mr. Hogan, where were you between 10 minutes of 12 and noon on the day of the robbery?
On the corner of Front Street, near the warehouse job.
Is that near where the back road joins Front Street?
Yeah.
If a car containing two bandits and Jacob Harriman had driven out of that back road as the defendant claims, would you have seen it?
I couldn't have missed it. And no car like that came out. Only one car came through, and there was only one man in it.
Do you recognize that man?
Yeah. It was Warren Whitaker.
No more questions. Take the witness.
Hogan? You're pretty fond of a girl named Evelyn Wainwright, aren't you?
That's my business.
Answer the question.
Well, yeah.
And a couple of days before the payroll robbery, she became engaged to the defendant, Warren Whitaker, didn't she?
Well, yeah.
Hogan, the moment you lost your girlfriend to the defendant, didn't you scheme to rob the payroll and frame Whitaker with your crime?
Your Honor, I object. Overruled.
No, of course not.
What were you doing on Front Street that Saturday noon?
I was waiting for Whitaker to punch his face in. I just heard about him and Evelyn.
Weren't you the lookout man for your two partners?
No, I tell you, that's a lie. You can't frame me. You ain't got nothing on me.
Oh, so you think this is a frame. What about Jimmy Spinelli? Didn't you offer Spinelli a job as pin boy to get him to change his story and frame Whitaker?
No, that's a lie. I tell you, I didn't frame him. He's guilty.
You're lying, Hogan, you're lying.
You killed Harriman. I saw you in that car.
I'll get you, Hogan, so
you?
help me. I'll get you. It's the last thing I ever do.
When order had been restored, the district attorney rested his case. The defense lawyer then opened the case for Warren Whitaker and called the defendant himself to the stand. Whitaker repeated his story of the holdup, and then his lawyer questioned him about his love for Evelyn Wainwright.
On the night before the robbery and murder, Whitaker, did you visit Evelyn Wainwright?
Yeah, I did.
What happened between you and Miss Wainwright?
I asked her again to marry me. I'd asked her before, and that night she finally said she would.
Did the name of Ben Hogan come up between you?
Yeah. Evelyn said she wouldn't run around with Hogan anymore as soon as I bought her an engagement ring. And, well, next day there was a hold-up and all the excitement, so I didn't get around to buying the ring till Monday.
And on Monday you gave her the ring?
I tried to, but told me she didn't want to have anything to do with me because I was suspected of murder. So I returned the ring and got my $500 back.
One more question. Where did you get the $500 to spend on an engagement ring?
I've been saving up to get married.
Thank you. Your witness.
Whitaker, how much money did you make as a private payroll guard and watchman?
Oh, about $35 a week.
How long did it take you to save $500?
Well, I don't know, a long time. I didn't keep track.
Wouldn't your bank book tell you?
I didn't keep the money in a bank.
You didn't keep your savings in the bank.
Well, there wasn't any reason to. I didn't know when I might want to spend it, well, like I did for the ring.
And you claim that $500 was the money found by Detective Domenico concealed in your room 3 days later when he arrested you?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, wasn't that money part of the $5,000 you took from the dead hand of Paymaster Harriman after you murdered him?
No, I told you what happened. The two guys jumped on the running board, one on each side. We had to drive slow on that dirt road, and they jumped on. One of them shot Jake. I don't know which one. It must have been the guy on my side of the car if the bullet was in the right temple.
But you said Harriman was shot before these bandits jumped on the running board. And in view of the position of the wound, that is a flat impossibility. Then when you realized it was an impossibility, you changed your story. Didn't you?
I didn't change it. At least, well, it all happened so fast. I didn't remember. I still don't remember, but I'm trying to tell the truth.
You'll have to try a lot harder to make this jury believe you, Whitaker. That's all.
Call Evelyn Wainwright.
Evelyn Wainwright. Evelyn Wainwright. Evelyn Wainwright.
Miss Wainwright, on the night before the holdup, you became engaged to the defendant. Is that right?
Yes. I said I'd marry him if he would buy me an engagement ring worth $500. I knew Warren had just $500 saved.
Had you seen that money before the holdup?
Yes, he showed it to me. He was trying to persuade me it was enough to get married on.
Well, when he bought you this ring, what did you do?
Well, naturally, I didn't really want such an expensive ring. I'd asked first just as a test. I wanted to make sure he loved me more than his money. And so I told him the engagement was off, so he'd return the ring. I was going to surprise him afterwards. I was going to tell him I loved him without him buying me things.
And did you tell him that?
No. The cops took him before I got a chance and put him in jail. They said that the $500 was part of the holdup money, but it wasn't. Warren had it before the holdup.
Thank you, Miss Wainwright. Your witness.
Miss Wainwright, you did not attempt to tell your story about the money to the authorities, even though every newspaper in town headlined the news that money was found in Whitaker's room, did you?
But I didn't realize. I didn't know but what he might have done some crazy thing. I didn't know that $500 was all the cops found. Look, lay off of me, will you? I'm telling the truth now, ain't I?
No more questions.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
State rest. Sum up for the defense, please.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, the state is trying to send an innocent man to his death on a flimsy, fabricated case of circumstantial evidence. The bus driver, Burke, claimed he remembered Whitaker out of hundreds of passengers every day, only after he read the newspapers. Would any of you, members of the jury, swear a man's life away so casually on the strength or weakness, rather, of so doubtful a recollection? And what about the boy James Spinelli, the supposed eyewitness to the murder, whose eyesight could not distinguish between a head of hair and a yellow hat in this courtroom, let alone a whole long city block away? What of Hogan, who helped Jimmy Spinelli dope his testimony out, offering him a job in his bowling alley by way of subtle persuasion? Hogan, who admits his deadly jealousy because Whitaker had finally cut him out with his girl. The district attorney has gone to great effort to imply that Whitaker's hard-earned savings were part of the stolen payroll. But we have shown that that money was in the possession of the defendant before the holdup. And where is the murder weapon? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I say you cannot take this young man's life on the basis of the exaggerations, vicious lies, that have been told in this courtroom. For Warren Whitaker is not guilty.
The prosecution will sum up. You all heard some fine rhetoric, ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate my talented colleague. But we have produced in this courtroom witnesses to every single phase of Whitaker's ghastly, cowardly crime. First, there was Jimmy Spinelli, who actually saw Whitaker at the very moment that he shot Harriman. Now, Jimmy Spinelli may be nearsighted, but he isn't so nearsighted he could have failed to see the two bandits whom Whitaker says held up that car, if they'd been there. But Spinelli saw only one man, Warren Whitaker. Then there is Benjamin Hogan, who recognized Whitaker as he drove out of that deserted back road where he had murdered his friend and companion onto Front Street. He may dislike Whitaker, but not enough to try to send him to the electric chair on false testimony. Finally, we have the witness Michael Burke, who saw Whitaker returning to the warehouse from the lot where he abandoned the car and Harriman's body. The defense claims that Burke could not have remembered Whitaker, but the plain fact is that Burke did remember him. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been asked to sympathize with this black-hearted murderer. I ask you to think of the fine man Warren Whitaker murdered in cold blood. Let him have your pity and your sympathy. But for this cowardly, callous killer, you could have but one burning desire: to send him to the fate he so richly deserved, with a verdict of guilty of murder in the first degree.
The judge will now instruct the jury. All those desiring to leave the courtroom may do so.
How would you have judged Warren Whitaker? Was he the victim of circumstantial evidence and of deluded, confused, or outright perjured witnesses? Or was he a guilty killer who had murdered in cold blood? We will bring you the actual verdict of the jury in just a moment. All that afternoon and evening, the jurors deliberated, but the courtroom crowd hung on and was still there when, at midnight, the jurors finally filed back into the jury box, prepared to deliver their verdict.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
How do you find?
We define the defendant, Warren Whitaker, guilty of murder in the first degree.
Okay, I admit I did it. But that double-crossed little two-timer isn't going to get away free. She was in it, too. Shut up. I'm going to tell the truth.
Order in the court. If you have any statement to make, Whitaker, come up here on the witness stand and make it.
Okay.
No, Warren.
Hold that woman. Take her outside and hold her in custody.
Let me go.
Go ahead, Whitaker.
Evelyn said she'd marry me if I had as much money as Hogan had. I'd no place to get it. She showed me how. She planned the whole thing. Well, I promised to go through with it, and I did. When I drove Harriman's body to that vacant lot, Evelyn was waiting there. I gave her the pistol and the money, all except $500 I took for myself. And then later, when I tried to get my share of the money, Evelyn just laughed at me. There was no way I could get the money from her without spilling the whole story, or she played me for a fine sucker. All I got out of killing Harriman was $500. Evelyn got the rest.
And so Warren Whitaker implicated his sweetheart before he paid for his crime in the electric chair. And when the murder pistol and the missing loot were actually found in the possession of Evelyn Wainwright, she too was tried, convicted, and sent to the chair as an accessory in the crime. And so ended one of the most unusual of payroll robberies, a robbery in which murder was a necessary part of the plot, and which ended, as do all crimes of violence, with eventual conviction and punishment of the criminals. Famous jury trials, the drama of the courts drawn from actual courtroom cases. This is a Grace Gibson radio production, directed by Lawrence H. Cecil.